This is a wonderful occasion where we can actually come together and in a very nice, relaxed environment with great friends and colleagues and neighbors be together to really think about the future. I would just like us to honor the fact that we have extraordinary privilege to be able to do this, to sit in safety, in coolness, with water, with each other. And it's not to be taken lightly these days, because in most places in the world, this is a decreasing opportunity. So just the chance to be together in reflective space is rare enough in our own nation right now. And I particularly want to talk to you as citizens or inhabitants of the state of Wisconsin. So I offer my condolences first. But I want to use your present experience as a lens into what is happening in many places. Here it's writ large, it's right in your face. In my brief conversation with the provost, he gave me a quote that I will spread around the world now, which was, "Every day it's a new psychotic event." I know a lot of people who feel that way. I think one of the possible assumptions of this gathering that I would like to challenge is the basic belief that human beings are rational. And that if we understand how we work and what makes for successful learning environments, what makes for successful futures, what makes for good science, what makes for good research, if we just learn how to do that better, we will be able to intervene in this time. I would like to challenge that assumption, because it's not true in my experience. I've been out in the world now for nearly 40 years doing this work. And the last 20 years has been out in places in the world, primarily in the global south and in the United States, where people have really learned how to overcome the current insanity. And what I've seen them do is that they no longer try and change the current insane systems. Instead, they just work very hard to develop their own certainty, and I use that word advisedly, their own confidence that they are doing the work they need to do. And they maintain close watch on their own personal sanity. So that's where I am. Very personally, I don't believe I'm going to affect the current insanity that is the dominant culture at this time, where people get away with the most outrageous statements, the most unfounded beliefs, as Derek has just pointed out to us, where people disregard good factual arguments, well-done science. We disregard all of the case studies and data we have about how to create effective learning environments, how to create full human beings. We're living in a culture which seemingly doesn't care about evidence, even though the buzzword is, well, if it's an evidence-based decision, of course, then it has more value than the normal insane ways we make decisions. So just to give you a little glimpse into the insanity that's very personal for me, I work very deeply with national parks now as a citizen advisor, and so I work closely with the senior leaders as well as park superintendents. And recently, the director of national parks, who's an extraordinary visionary leader, told me how he went before a congressional committee to present his $3.8 billion annual budget. Okay? It's a significant chunk of cash, although it's less than we spend on the war every week. So the only questions he was asked by two freshman congressmen, this is really depressing, get ready, The only questions he was asked were, why did 2 of our constituents get traffic tickets in a national park? Yeah, that's the level. And he has to sit there as a political appointee and not say anything clever, witty, or, to get back at them. He just has to, it's just complete nonsensical. And then the other thing that is heartbreaking from the position of science is that of our 82 new Congress people, 62 of them, who are all Tea Parties, do not believe in global warming. So they're not even willing to entertain the conversation, even though we know it's in our face. What do you think this heat is about, folks? What do you think this crazy weather is about all over the world right now? So that's the times in which we live. So what I'd like to do is reflect on a headline that I read yesterday in USA Today, which said, it had a picture of Obama's campaign poster, and it said, "What comes after hope?" Because Obama got elected on hope and change, and now the question is, so the next campaign, how's it going to be framed? I think that's a good question for all of us. We have all, I would assume, or at least most of us here, have been fully engaged in our work and are interested in learning more and more, and we're interested in making a contribution. Or else you just wanted a nice place to sit on a hot afternoon. But I'm going to just assume that that's who you are for a moment. And we all begin our work with this feeling of hope, enthusiasm. Yes, I'm going to make a contribution. I'm going to train myself. I'm going to invest in developing my intellect and my heart, perhaps, if you're really lucky, to make a contribution to the world. Did I get you right? Is that who you are? So after the hope is gone, after the hope of being able to make a useful contribution or to have your work picked up and for it to create change inside schools, inside science, inside conservation, inside whatever your work is. When you are not succeeding and that initial hope is gone, what's next? I like that question. For me, what's next? I'm going to answer it, by the way. For me, what's next? Because I've been thinking about it for 24 hours. For me, what's next is fully contemplating the reality of the situation we're in and being willing to take in all the evidence that's there, not just the evidence of, minor successes or the evidence that, yes, I really am making a difference, and then a month later your work disappears in shreds. So for me, the antidote to hope, which always is accompanied by fear of failing. If you hope for something, you bring in its partner, fear. So the antidote for all of this is to just be fully engaged in what we're doing, free of expectations that we will make a difference. This is what happens with the great activists in the world. They understand that they may not make a difference, and after a while, it doesn't matter because you're so connected to the work you're doing, and you do have this experience of flow and rightness about it. You're so connected to that you persevere no matter what. No matter what. So for me, this is a question right now of how do I hold my identity? Who do I choose to be for this time? In a world of environmental destruction, of increased human irrationality on the part of our decision makers, in a world, the most complimentary thing I can say about our current legislators at most levels, not just in Wisconsin, but all over the country and perhaps the world, the compliment I can give them is to say, oh, you must have been taken over by aliens because no human would act this way, right? Because it's so destructive. It's so destructive. There's a Chilean poet who had to invent a new word to describe what's going on, and he talked about those who undo the future, who undo the future. So whatever your world view of what's really going on, I would like you to contemplate, please, this question of deep identity. Like, are you willing to keep going on behalf of the things that you have found to be valuable for other human beings, for a good human life, for making a contribution to society or to your family or to your neighbors? Are you willing to keep going no matter what? Because it feels like, yes, this is my work. So one of my 2 recent books is called Perseverance. That's why I'm speaking to you about it. And the book is based on a quote from the Hopi Nation. Now, the Hopi people from the Southwest are stewards of the earth, and periodically they've gone to the United Nations and they've issued prophecies about what's happening to the earth. I mean, it's a very painful stewardship to hold at this point, to hold the Mother Earth. And so in 2000, they issued a prophecy, and I'm just going to give you the first part of the prophecy, but it said, it described these times. It said, "Here now is a river flowing very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who are trying to hold on to the shore. They are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, move into the middle of the river, and keep our heads above water." I love this image of there being a few people who are willing to let go of the shore, let go of old ways, who recognize the force and velocity of this time, who feel that it does have direction. I have the faintest idea which direction it's going, but who do feel that it has direction and therefore are willing to learn how to stay in the middle of the river so that others, may benefit, so that we're not torn apart. So I just put that question out to you as you think about your work and you think about what you're learning here. What is it that gives you the ability to even want to go into the middle of the river, and then what gives you the ability to stay? Now, I have had the great good fortune to work with a number of people who call themselves walkouts. And so the title of my book that just came out is called Walk Out, Walk On. This was a phrase given to us by some high school students in India who just left school. And they left school for all of the reasons that Mihai just spoke about, because they felt like they were suffocating, they weren't learning, they were losing their creativity. And the system, of course, labeled them as a failure and said, "Oh, you're a dropout. You're the problem." And the students turned around and said, "No, you're the problem. The system is the problem. And we're walking out of a system that limits us, that confines us, that shrinks us, actually, where we lose our potential. And we're walking out so we can walk on. And we can walk on to find places where we feel creative, we can make a contribution, and we can actually feel ourselves as alive and growing and lifelong learners."